This is the story of Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells was born into slavery in Mississippi in 1862, several months before United States President Abraham Lincoln issued freedom of slavery. Her enslaved parents were James and Elizabeth Wells, both held by Spiers Bali. She was one of 8 children. The family resided at Burley's house, now named the Burley's Gatewood House, where Elizabeth was a cook. Ida's father was a master at carpentry. After the Civil War, he was a raceman who worked for the advancement of blacks. He attended Shaw University in Hollow Springs, now Russ College, but dropped out to help his family. A religious woman, Elizabeth Wells was very strict with her kids. Both of Ida's parents were active in the Republican Party during the Reconstruction. Ida attended Shaw like her father, but was expelled for rebellious beliefs after confronting the college president. While visiting her grandma in the Mississippi village in 1878, Ida was age 16, revealing that Hollow Springs was suffering a yellow fever epidemic. Both of her parents and her infant brother died during this event, leaving her and her 5 little siblings orphans. Following the funeral of her parents and brother, family and relatives decided to split the 6 up and send them into various foster homes. Wells did not like this idea, so she decided to get a job as a teacher at a black elementary school. Her grandma, along with family, friends and relatives, decided to keep the kids while Wells was working, or her other siblings. She became outraged, learning that the school district pays white teachers $80 a month, but only pays her $30 a month. And she became really outraged when she figured this out about the educational system. In 1883, Wells took her youngest siblings to Massachusetts to live with her aunt and get closer to the family. She also learned that she could earn a lot more working there than Mississippi, so she moved there. She was hired as a teacher for Woodstock for the Shelby County. During her summer vacation, she attended summer sessions at Fairfax University, a historic black college in Nashville. She also attended Le Moyne. She held strong political opinions and provoked more people to her views on women's rights. At age 24, she wrote, "I will not begin at this late day by doing what my soul abhors, sugaring men, weak sinful creatures, with flattery to retain them and astrut or to gratify a revenge." On May 4th, 1884, a train conductor with the Memphis and Charleston Railroad ordered Wells to give up her seat in the front-class women's car and move to the smoky seat, which was always crowded with other passengers. This verdict allowed railroad companies to continue racially segregations of their passengers. Wells refused, and the conductor and two other men dragged Wells out of the car. When she returned to Memphis, she hired a African American attorney to sue the railroad. Wells gained publicity in Memphis when she wrote a newspaper article for the Lifeway, the Living Way, a black church weekly, about her treatment on the train. When her lawyer was paid off by the railroad, she hired a white attorney. She won the case in December 24, 1884, and she was granted a $500 award. The railroad company appealed to the Tennessee's Supreme Court, which reversed the lower court's ruling in 1884. It concluded by making Wells pay court costs. Wells' reaction to the higher court decision illustrates her strong conviction of civil rights and religious faith, as she responded with a few statements. I feel so disappointed because I had hoped such great things for me from my suit for my people. Oh God, is there no justice in this land for us? While teaching elementary school, she was offered an editorial position for the Evening Stars in Washington, D.C. She also wrote weekly articles in the Living Ways weekly newspaper under a pen name, Lola. Gaining a reputation for writing about the race issue, in 1889 she became co-owner and editor of Freedom Speech and Headline, an anti-segregationist newspaper that was started by the Reverend Taylor Nightingale and was based at the Bell Street Baptist Church in Memphis. It published articles such as Racial Injustice. In 1891, Bell was dismissed from her teaching job at Michigan Board of Education due to the voracious article she wrote, which critiqued the condition in the colored schools of the region. Wells was devastated but undaunted and hasteful, considering all her energy on writing articles for the Living Way and the Freedom Speak and Highlight. In 1889, Thomas Moss, a friend of Wells, opened the People's Grocery in the Curve, a black neighborhood just outside of Memphis city limits. It did well and competed with the white owner grocery stores across the street. While Wells was out of town in Mississippi, a white mob invaded her friend's store. During the altercation, 3 white men were shot and injured. Moss and 2 other black men, names I will not say, were arrested and jailed pending trial. A large white mob stormed the police and killed the 3 men. After the lashing of her friends, Wells wrote in Freedom Speak and Highlight, urging blacks to leave Memphis together, all together. There is, therefore, only one thing left to do: save our money and save a town which will neither protect our lives properly nor give us a fair trial in the courts, but take us out and murder us in cold blood, which by persons. Wells emphasized the public spectacle of the lashings. More than 6,000 blacks did leave Memphis. Others organized boycotts for white-only businesses. After being threatened with violence, she brought a pistol. She later wrote, "They had made me a exile and threatened my life for facting at the truth." The murder of her friend Dawn dove well into researching and document lashes and their causes. She began investigating journalism by looking at the charges given for the murders, which officially started her anti-lashing campaign. She spoke on the issue at various black women clubs and rose more than $500 to investigate lashing and published her research. Wells found that blacks were lashed for such social control reasons and failed to pay dues, not appearing to give way to whites, comparing with whites economically, and bringing drinks in public, or being drunk in public. She found little process of the frequents claiming that blacks were lashed because they had sexually abused or attacked white women, which was a lobby that party accorded for white American collective acceptance or silence on lashing, as well as its acceptance by many of the educated African American communities. Before the lashing of her three friends, Wells had held in this belief and concluded that although lashing was contrary to the law and order, it was the terrible crimes of rape that led to the lashing, and that perhaps the mob was justified in taking his rapist's life. She published her findings in a book entitled Southern Horror: Lash Law is All This Phases. She wrote an article that suggested that unlike the myth that white women were sexually as at risk of attack by black men, more relation between black men and white women were consensual. After the editing was published, Wells left Memphis for a short trip to New England to cover another story in a magazine, not thinking that she would not return to Memphis for many decades. The publishing to editorial, Wells had enraged the Southern men of the country, who may not admitted to hide their investigations toward the author of the editorial, who they thought to be a man. The response in two lead white newspapers, the Daily Commercial and the Evening Scepter, was brimming with hatred. In May 27, 1892, while she was away in Pennsylvania, a mob destroyed the office of the Freedom Speech and Highlight. in retaliation for her controversial article. Other studies have supported Wells, finding her lashing as a form of community control and unadvised verbal that affects lashing. Buck and Turner's influential 1990 studies found that economics played a major role, which, with the rise of lashings higher than marginal whites were under threat, they well spoke in groups in New York City where their audience included more leading African American women. On October 5, 1892, a testamental dinner held a Lyric Hall, organized by political activists and club women, raised significant funds for Wells' anti-lash campaign. Their activities also led to the founding of the Women's Loyal Union in New York and Boston. Because of the threats to her life, Wells left Memphis and moved to Chicago. She continued to wag her anti-lashing campaign and wrote columns attacking Southern injustice. Her article was published in the New York Aegis newspaper. She continued to investigate lashing incidents and the ostensible cause in the case. Together with Frederick Douglass, another black leader, she organized a black boycott of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago for its failure to collaborate with the black community on exhibits to represent African American lives. Wells and Douglass wrote sections of a pamphlet to be distributed there. It details the progress of blacks since they arrived in America and also exposed the process of Southern lashings. Wells left reported to Albion that copies of the pamphlet has been distributed to more than 20,000 people in the fair. After the World Fair in Chicago, Wells decided to stay in the city instead of returning to New York. That year, she started working with the Chicago Conservators, the oldest African American newspaper in the city. Also in 1893, Wells completed a lawsuit against two black Memphis attorneys. She turned to Turkey, who had trained and practiced as a lawyer and judge, for possibly free legal help. Deeply in debt, Turkey could not afford to help but asked her friend Ferdinand Barton for his aid. Born in Alabama, Barton became the editor of the Chicago Conservators in 1878. He was an assistant state attorney for 14 years. Barton accepted the prohibited job. Wells took 2 tours in Europe to her campaign for judgment. The first in 1893 and the second in 1894. Wales sent to Great Britain to invitation of Catherine Impey, a British Quaker, an opponent of imperialism and proponent of racial equality. Impey wanted to ensure that the British public learned about the problems of lashing in U.S. Wales ranted at moral cruel among the British. Wales accompanied her speaker with a photo of the white mob and granted white children passing near a hanged body. Her talks created a sensation because some of the audience remained doubtful. Wales intended to reach money and expose the U.S. lashing violence, but received a little that she had definitely covered her travel expenses. In 1894, before leaving the United States for the second time to visit Great Britain, Wales called on William Penn Nixon, the editor of Daily Ocean. This Chicago paper was the local Republican Party's organ and competitor to the Democratic Chicago Tribune. The Daily Ocean was the only paper in the United States that persistently denounced lashing. After she told Nixon about her planned tour, he asked her to write for the newspaper which in England. She was the first African American woman to be paid correspondent for a mainstream white newspaper. Wales was highly effective in speaking in Europe, announced audiences who were shocked to learn about the rate of violence against blacks in the United States. Wales toured 2 tours in Europe, helping gain support for her cause. She called for the formation of groups of formality to protecting the lashes, or protects the lashes. Wales helped catalyze anti-lashing groups in Europe, which turned to the press and United States government to guarantee the safety of blacks in the South. By the late 1900s, WCTU, a predominantly white women organization, had branched in each state as a membership for more than 200,000. Part of the progressive movement, it attracts some women to political actions who considered the suffrage movement as too radical. Some women were active in both movements. Frances Willard was president of the Temperance Union from 1879 to 1898. Wales kept track of her life through her diaries. In them, she admits a few personal things. Before she got married, she admitted that she was only dating a man in who she was little romantically interested, because she did not want romance to be the center of the relationship. She wanted to more about have how she and her partner interacted mentally rather than physically. Wills also admitted two personal flaws, analyzing that she was quick to criticize and use harsh words toward someone because she lost all of her possessions. Her diary also revealed that she brought items which she really couldn't afford. In 1895, Wills married her attorney, Ferdinand Burnett. She was one of the first married African women to keep her own last name and as well as talk to her husband. The couple has 4 children, sorry. Wells died at age 68, March 25th, 1931, in Chicago, Illinois.